Every day, billions of people pay for goods or services with money. Cash and coins have different sizes, colors, and shapes. And to become such a familiar means of payment, money survived centuries of evolution. It all began with the formation of settled life and the emergence of various crafts. The division of labor evolved, which means people needed to exchange goods. But before we could get to the money, people learned to barter, to exchange one commodity for another. So the grain could be exchanged for cattle, clothing for corn, fur for cocoa beans, and a tool for the seashell, which served as decoration. But the convenience of this system raised a lot of questions, because there were often situations when it was not possible to exchange one product for another, because the offered product was not suitable for the other party. In addition, goods from one side could deteriorate rapidly when the other had been stored for a long time. Over time, people began to realize that there must be a universal product that will satisfy everyone and can be easily exchanged for any other product. Saltstones were used first. Each size had its own value. Another example was the cowrie shells which people used. In addition, fur and bronze bracelets were used, although they already had a significant cost and served for more expensive purchases. Over time, they began to be replaced by the first prototypes of money: gold, silver, and copper, which were used for exchange for goods. People have learned to distribute this improvised money in value terms. The Egyptians were among the first to do so, and the process subsequently moved to Mesopotamia. Each time, the metal ingot was weighed and exchanged for a particular type of goods, but often it was uncontrollable due to the large weight. The real revolution took place in the 7th century BC in the Greek Lydia in the territory of modern Turkey. The Lydians learned to mint gold and silver alloy coins. Such an alloy already had a more understandable cost, allowing trade to thrive to its fullest degree. It was the Greek traders who taught the Mediterranean people to use the coins. That is how the coins got to Rome. Up to the Middle Ages, coins corresponded to their value. China picked up Lydia's idea, first using figurines and then bronze coins. To make them light in weight, the center was minted empty. This also served as a wallet. The Chinese could tie coins into a pile. However, for serious purchases, such money has become a real problem. Practically no one was immune from robbery, and huge sums immediately attracted attention. In addition, it was especially difficult to carry large sums. A bunch of thousands of coins weighed more than 4 kilograms. This problem was solved by paper money, which was also invented in China in the 7th and 8th century. However, their spread acquired large scale of distribution only in the 11th century. In general, it was in ancient Asia that the first special methods of transportation of money were developed for trade purposes. The safe way was the hawala system, developed in Indostan. Indian merchants who owned different goods could negotiate among themselves. A merchant in one city received money for the merchant's goods in another place. The buyer had to get the certificate and then just pick up the goods. Merchants balanced their incomes at the end of the month and compensated each other for the difference. The modification went further than simplifying the lives of buyers. Suppliers began to use hawala among themselves. Interestingly, the quantity needs of goods has been constantly changing due to drought or vice versa, crop. Serious overpayments could be compensated by a camel or waiting for the situation to flip in the following months and the debt would be paid. The world's first debit credit was created. The system spread from India to Asia and Africa. It may sound fantastic, but banks emerged specifically due to this system. Coins ruled the world for a long time. They evolved and over time became real works of art with more detailed images. But the question of their weight has not disappeared. The idea of paper money was first brought to Europe by the Venetian traveler Marco Polo, but the idea did not gain popularity among the nobility in Europe. However, there were still some results in this direction. In order not to carry crazy sums for huge distances, European states were gradually introducing bills, orders by which a certain number of coins can be obtained even in other cities. The first bank in modern understanding arises in Italian Florence. The most influential genus in Florence, the Medici, founded its bank in the 14th century. It was from the Italian language that the name of the institution occurred, as well as many modern terms. The Medici Bank was engaged in money storage, credit, and currency exchange. Incredibly, it was the dependent Austrian province that invented the first modern money. Such progressivism was distinguished in Holland. In the 15th century, it was in the Netherlands that banknotes similar to modern ones finally appeared. The Dutch guilder already had a clear value. The system worked, but people still did not trust the paper idea. The situation was aggravated by banks. Although the banknotes had to be backed by silver, banks could artificially increase the amount of money, and in case of fluctuation, were often unable to return all precious metals to the depositors. This problem was solved in the mid-17th century. The British Empire, where the world's first central bank appears, did that. Firstly, the state bank prints banknotes of one standard, and secondly, supports them with gold. In case of difficulty, it supports other banks and cannot go bankrupt unless the state ceases to exist. This idea is gradually being picked up by other states. However, the system was experiencing a lot of ups and downs. People still do not trust paper, which is actually worth a penny and has only a nominal value. Moreover, banknotes work only when the economy is doing well. Only at the beginning of the 19th century, the international gold standard was introduced. Now, every banknote of the state must be backed by gold. Therefore, the printing of unlimited quantities of banknotes was excluded, which did not allow money to devalue. It worked, but not for long. The concept of the gold standard was seriously undermined by constant wars in Europe, from the wars unleashed by Napoleon Bonaparte to the Franco-Prussian War. But the real blow to the gold standard came from World War I. The countries had to pay for ammunition, equipment, and medicine, hundreds of tons of which went to the front every day. Most states have lost their gold reserves. It must be understood that the value of money remains relevant as long as the situation is stable and all people believe that for this value they can get a certain product or service. But when there are wars, the situation changes. One of the worst economic consequences of the war has been hyperinflation in Germany. At the peak of the exchange rate was more than 4.2 trillion marks per dollar. 100 trillion notes were in circulation. The most famous currency, the US dollar, has also survived its falls. During the Great Depression, US President Roosevelt abolished the gold standard to increase money and stimulate the economy. The idea of Roosevelt was accepted by other states. The end of the gold standard was set by World War II, which had no equal in terms of costs. As a result, in Hungary, there was a bill of sextillion pengos, and the money was swept away together with rubbish on the street. People returned to the beginning of the formation of society and preferred to get salaries with food and clothing instead of actual money. In addition to currency instability, the situation was complicated by counterfeiters. This craft began with the invention of the first money. The technology of forgery was transferred from generation to generation. It was very difficult to teach a person outside such a family to make quality forgeries. But in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the real boom in this sphere was made. Prior to this time, even high-quality equipment, high-quality paint and paper, plates for bills, did not give a guarantee of truthful forgery. Everything needed in the United States could be found in only one city, Chicago. The development of printers and scanners has led to an incredibly high number of forgeries. Counterfeiters upgraded their skills to a new level. The most forged banknote in the world was $100. In the 90s, the craftsmen sold their counterfeits to various criminal mafias. Although the cost of counterfeiting could be 30 to 50 cents per note, with the value of $100, the volumes were so large that the counterfeiters made millions, and since their buyers were criminal families, there was no connection with the police. All this forced Congress to order a new banknote. This moment has changed everything. The number of protective elements at that time knew no boundaries. New cellulosic paper, watermark, color-changing paint, protective strip, microtext. An additional method of protection was the marker, which left a yellow line on the real bill, when most of the forgeries had a black mark after using it. There was also an information control. Citizens began to pay more attention to such things and saw posters with all the characteristics of forgery at every step. This pushed most of the counterfeiters out of the market. But there were those who found a way out. The paint used for printing was freely available on the market, and the paper was replaced by the pages of the handbook, between which the watermark was preliminarily clamped. In the late 90s, a new currency is emerging counter to the dollar. The European Bank is creating the euro, although so far it exists only electronically. In the early aughts, the common currency is already in real circulation. At first, the euro was quoted at a lower price than the dollar, but soon the euro becomes more expensive. The peak is $1.60 per euro before the financial crisis. As a result of the war in Ukraine, the dollar and the euro are again at almost the same level. Today, the euro is used by more than 20 countries, including members of the EU. Croatia joined last in early 23. However, some countries never adopted the euro. In particular, Denmark, Sweden, and the UK have already left the EU. This was due to the strength of their own currencies. The situation is more complicated with less wealthy countries. Bulgaria and Hungary cannot switch to the euro because of severe restrictions. The economy should be stable, and the budget deficit should be very low. Poland and the Czech Republic, for example, have already reached the necessary level, but the parliaments of both states have publicly postponed this issue. And sometimes they even object to the adoption of the euro and consider it necessary to keep the national currency. In general, the printing of the euro notes in denominations of 50 and 100 euros costs about 10 cents. Fantastically, coins, which were invented more than 27 centuries ago, are still in circulation. Of course, they have already lost their weight, and to create a coin nowadays we use 3D graphics and reproduce it on a large layout. The value of the coins is also significantly higher than the cost. The exception is only 1 euro cent, which costs almost 1 cent. However, both paper money and coins are gradually inferior to electronic calculations. Recently in Switzerland, the number of non-cash transactions was about 90% of all. It is expected that the scale of this trend will only increase. This method has many advantages. It is convenient. With today's technologies, you can pay with a wristwatch or smartphone. Cash is saturated with microbes. Drugs and illegal weapons are bought with cash. Cash can be worn out. It must be reproduced and shipped to retail outlets. Cash, despite ever-increasing security features, can still be counterfeited. So there's no doubt that cash will disappear.